Shifting our focus now, Canadian officials, including the Justice Minister, are in Washington. They wrapped up a meeting with U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi a short time ago, and we're getting new details about what was discussed. The CBC's Olivia Stevanovich is following this story. She joins us live from Ottawa. So, Olivia, what else do we know about this meeting or these meetings?
Well, Andrew, this is the second high-level meeting since Prime Minister Mark Carney announced late last week that Canada will be dropping most retaliatory tariffs against American products, this being the second high-level meeting between Canadian and White House officials since that announcement was made. And while the focus of this meeting wasn't necessarily on trade specifically, it certainly has economic implications for those discussions going forward. Now, this meeting was organized by Pam Bondi herself, the U.S. Attorney General. She reached out to the Canadians requesting a meeting with the Public Safety Minister Gary Anandasangaree, Justice Minister Sean Fraser, and Canada's fentanyl czar Kevin Brosseau. So this was their first get-to-know-you meeting, if you will, at the Department of Justice at the White House. And we're told by Fraser's office that this meeting lasted about 45 minutes. It started a little late, Andrew, because of the Minneapolis school shooting that, of course, Bondi was involved with, was getting briefed on. So it started a little late, and we're told by Fraser's office that it started with a solemn tone as well because of this school shooting, with the ministers offering their condolences. But then they got straight into business, speaking about border security, criminal justice reform. Now, Fraser, according to his office, shared details about some of the work Canada is doing and preparing to do come this fall when Parliament resumes. Legislation is being prepared to address bail reform, for example, sentencing, and even gender-based violence and femicide. So this information was shared with Bondi. And Fraser's office also says that overall, they believe that there is a renewed sense here of working together. They describe the tone of this meeting as cordial, warm, receptive. And you can see a post there from Fraser himself, a photo too of the meeting in which the two ministers and Canada's fentanyl czar is there with Bondi, again, their first face-to-face meeting. And we're told by Fraser's office that this ended in Washington, D.C. This meeting ended after 45 minutes with Bondi sharing her personal cell phone number with the two cabinet ministers and the fentanyl czar. They're all agreeing to stay in close contact going forward, Andrew.
At the same time, the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade, Dominic LeBlanc, curtailed his trip to Washington. What are you hearing about that?
Well, Dominic LeBlanc was the first cabinet minister to have a high-level meeting since Carney's announcement that he would be dropping retaliatory tariffs, most of the retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. LeBlanc had his meeting yesterday with the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and that lasted for more than 90 minutes, even though it was supposed to be only an hour, Andrew. Now, LeBlanc was supposed to stay in Washington, D.C., according to his office, until at least Thursday. That was the original plan when he was heading down to Washington, D.C. yesterday. But then those plans changed following this meeting. Now, you could see there a photo of the two of them smiling following the discussion yesterday. Now, LeBlanc's office and Canadian officials have described this as a positive meeting that was had and productive. But there are no more face-to-face meetings that is scheduled at this time between LeBlanc and Lutnick, even though the Canadian side was prepared to do that this week. And that's because we're being told from the Canadian side that there is technical work to do now going forward, especially when it comes to those sectoral tariffs. I mean, the reason why LeBlanc was heading to Washington, D.C. So soon after Carney's announcement about retaliatory tariffs last week is because he's trying to lift these sectoral tariffs on Canadian auto, steel, and aluminum, or try to reduce them as much as possible, while also trying to lay the groundwork for the upcoming review of the Canada-Mexico Free Trade Agreement. So a lot of work going on, a lot of work still going on behind the scenes. And at this point in time, there is no need, according to the Canadians, for more face-to-face meetings. A lot of those discussions have to be held behind closed doors between experts. And that's why he's on his way back to Canada, even though he will still be in close contact with Lutnick over text messages as well.
Olivia, thank you. The CBC's Olivia Stevanovich live in Ottawa. For more on this, I want to bring in John Ibbotson. He is a writer and journalist, and he's joining us from Ottawa. John, great to see you. Thank you for taking the time.
Good to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about, there's two meetings going on. Let's talk a little bit about Sean Fraser and Pam Bondi. why are our ministers, when it comes to that file, these trumped up, pun intended, statistics on fentanyl coming from Canada, when U.S. statistics show it's less than 1%, so it is overstated. It's ridiculously overstated, I think you could say, in terms of the problem. They have to show up at these meetings and kind of just like, I don't know, say, oh, we're still kind of keeping our eye on the border on a problem that doesn't really exist, but that you say does exist.
Yeah, so there's the reality, and then there's the fiction. The fiction, as you have already said, is this notion that Canada has to worry about fentanyl crossing the border. Almost none does. What else do the Americans want? On the justice side, it may be a case that they want access to databases, to crime information. That's something normally Canada does work fairly cooperatively with the United States on in areas where there's a perceived joint threat on either side of the border of one country toward the other. But of course, these aren't ordinary times. And Ms. Bondi is not any ordinary attorney general. So there are going to be big questions for Canadians to ask themselves and for this federal government to deal with. How much do we want to share with the Trump administration? How much of Canadian citizens' information do they want to be giving to the United States? And then there's the other big question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What really is that the Americans want? And that's on the trade negotiation side. Do they want to have a general tariff that will be levied on us during the renegotiations of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement? Do they want access to our own markets in financial services, in culture, in agriculture, in transportation? I don't know what it is they're going to be demanding in exchange for what it is they're going to be offering, but that's going to be the nub of the negotiations in the months ahead that could very well lead well into next year.
Okay, since we talk about this almost every day, it is top of mind, according to polls, to Canadians about Trump and tariffs and what it all means. Let's kind of dig down into what's just happened in the last hours, and that is that there was a meeting yesterday between Dominic LeBlanc and Commerce Secretary, that's the Canada-U.S. Trade Minister, and the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. Seems to be signs of progress. And then there was supposed to be another meeting today and maybe further into the week, and then that was curtailed because, according to a Canadian official, there's technical work to do, so there's no need for the high official talks to continue. The experts need to kind of go in and work out some of those technical details. What's your read of that?
Well, we'll know about a year from now, won't we? What was really going on, whether the talks were in fact productive or in fact we just got kicked out and went home. By removing the retaliatory tariffs, by removing the digital services tax, by the other things that Canada has done to accommodate itself to the demands of the Trump administration, the hope is that we can have meaningful talks with an administration and with officials who are prepared to have a genuine back and forth. I don't know that any of that is true. I don't know that the United States is prepared to offer any kind of tariff concessions to Canada other than in possible exchange for access to the market in areas where, up until now, Canada said the United States is not allowed to go. As I said, in everything from financial services to airlines to supply management. These are going to be very tough talks. The idea that we have to give away retaliatory tariffs just to get the Americans to say we'll take a meeting, and then for that meeting to end and for the minister to have to return home because there's nothing more that he can do while he's in Washington, suggests that we still are not very present on the American radar. And to the extent that we are on their radar, they don't like what they see. And we should not like what it is they're planning to do to or for us. These are very hard times, very difficult talks. But people elected Mark Carney because they think he is the one best suited to negotiate with Donald Trump and his cabinet with the American administration. And we're going to have to find out whether that's true.
And so if it is going to be a while before any kind of deal is reached with the United States, how much runway do you think voters are going to give Carney, who's still enjoying pretty rosy polling numbers, but our Canadians' patience starting to wear a little thin and saying, wait a second, we're sort of giving up this, we're taking down some of these tariffs, and yet the minister's going home early.
Yeah, I think we should give them a fair bit of runway, and I hope that voters and citizens will be as patient as possible with the administration because whatever else is happening, the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement is in place. Most of the trade that's crossing the border is duty-free. Mr. Carney made the point, and the point is a valid one, that we have a more favorable trading relationship with the United States than just about any other country in the world, where places like the European Union and Japan and others are having to pay tariffs. We're going to have to pay tariffs too someday, I'm guessing. But as long as CUSMA is working, trade is working. And unless and until that deal gets changed, we should give the federal government as much runway as possible, bearing in mind that for as long as the status quo is in place, Canada is in a very favorable relationship compared to to other countries in trading with the United States.
And we're just over 2 weeks away from the return of Parliament, and Pierre Poilievre will be back in the House as the leader of the official opposition. Do you think the longer we go without a trade deal with the U.S., the more effective Poilievre's attacks on Carney will be?
I mean, I think Mr. Poilievre will be making a very good point if he is saying, where's all the stuff? Where are the infrastructure programs? Where is the internal free trade agreement that the federal government promised? Where are the pipelines? Where are the new ports? We're waiting for announcements, and the announcements haven't come. So the longer we wait for those announcements, the more it is completely appropriate for Mr. Carney as leader of the official opposition to say, you promised us all this stuff, nothing is getting done. In terms of a final agreement with the United States, I mean, again, it's Mr. Poilievre's duty to oppose as leader of the opposition. But I think and I hope he would agree that as long as we have this favorable relationship with the United States, we should not be rushing into a new agreement, especially if that new agreement is inferior to the one that we have right now.
John, always good to talk to you. Thank you. John Ibbitson in Ottawa.